Imagine a silent desert where the wind blows over ruins that time forgot to name. Think of the kings who erected monuments so high they seemed to wound the sky, the merchants who crossed implacable oceans in search of a rare spice, and the lovers who swore eternity under stars that today shine over their graves. All of them, without exception, were moved by an invisible fire, a thirst that is never quenched, a force we call desire. But what if, in the blink of an eye, that fire went out? If the restless search for the next throne, the next conquest, or the next kiss simply ceased, what would remain of man? Would we be gods in a state of absolute peace, or merely empty shadows wandering through a colorless world? This is the question that echoes through the ages, from the caves of ascetics to palaces of gold. And to understand what we will be if we stop desiring, we must first understand how desire shaped every fiber of human civilization. If you seek to unravel the mysteries of our own nature and how the great minds of the past face this dilemma, join us on this journey and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapters of our history. The history of humanity is not written with dates, but with hungers. Thousands of years ago, on the banks of the Indus River, men and women sat in deep meditation, trying to silence the deafening noise of the will. They observed that desire was like a flame. The more wood you throw on, the more it consumes. In ancient India, the young prince Siddhartha Gautama abandoned the obscene luxury of his gardens, the scent of sandalwood and the touch of silk, because he realized that despite having everything, he still suffered. Suffering, he said, is born from the thirst to possess what is fleeting. The smell of rain on dry earth, the taste of a feast, the power to command armies, all these are illusions that bind us to an infinite wheel of pain. For these sages, to stop desiring was the only way to achieve real freedom, Nirvana, where the self dissolves into totality. Imagine the scene: a man sitting under a fig tree, ignoring the call of glory and the fear of death, seeking the void. To the modern world, this looks like giving up. But to them, it was the ultimate victory. However, cross the mountains and observe the legions of Rome. There, desire was the very backbone of the world. The smell of sweat and leather in the military ranks, the clinking of gold coins exchanged in the forums, the ambition to turn a village of shepherds into the center of the known universe. For the Romans, desire was not a disease, but the engine of civilization. If they had stopped desiring, the roads would never have been paved, the aqueducts would never have carried water to thirsty cities, and the very idea of progress would have died in its cradle. The tension between spiritual detachment and material ambition is what defines the collapse and rise of empires. When a society stops desiring expansion, it begins to stagnate. When the individual stops desiring tomorrow, they become a passive observer of their own decay. Think of the sound of chariots in the stadiums and the clamor of the crowds asking for bread and circuses. There, desire was used as a tool of control. But deep in every Roman heart, there was the same void that Siddhartha tried to fill. They built gigantic temples to gods who personified their desires: Mars for war, Venus for love, Pluto for wealth. The ancient world was a theater of clashing wills. If we remove the desire of a Spartan soldier, he will no longer fight for his shield. If we remove the desire of an Egyptian architect, the pyramids would never point toward the stars. Desire is what makes us defy our own mortality. It is the desperate attempt to leave a mark on marble before the dust reclaims us. But there is a dark price to this pursuit. Look at the ruins of civilizations that collapsed under the weight of their own greed. Where the desire for power became a pathology, the land was exhausted, peoples were enslaved, and blood flowed through the channels that should have carried life. Desire is a compass, but it can also be a shipwreck. What happens to the individual who decides they want nothing more? In the Egyptian desert, in the first centuries of the Christian era, the so-called Desert Fathers abandoned populous cities to live in caves, eating just enough not to die. They sought apatheia, a state of liberation from the passions. For them, to stop desiring was like cleaning the mirror of the soul so that God could be reflected. They felt the scorching heat of the sun, the biting cold of the night, and absolute solitude. And there, in the silence, they claimed to find a fullness that no emperor ever knew. Yet, if we all followed this path, humanity would cease. There would be no art, for art is the desire to communicate the inexpressible. There would be no science, for science is the desire to unravel the secrets of nature. If we stop desiring, time stops flowing in the same way. The present becomes a static ocean. Desire creates the tension between what we are and what we want to be. It is the space between the bow and the arrow. Without that tension, the arrow falls at our feet, useless. We are condemned to desire, trapped in a biological structure that rewards us with bursts of pleasure every time we reach a goal, only to leave us empty minutes later, begging for the next conquest. Imagine the agony of a king who conquered all known lands and, upon reaching the edge of the ocean, wept because there were no more worlds to conquer. Alexander the Great is the ultimate symbol of the desire that consumes its own host. His life was a fire that lit up the world, but it went out quickly, leaving only ashes and a fragmented empire. On the other hand, the monk who smiles in the face of his own finitude, possessing nothing but his robe, represents mastery over the inner beast. Which of these two paths is the true triumph? If you stop desiring, you cease to be a slave to circumstances, but you also cease to be the author of your own epic story. Human nature is a battlefield where these two forces fight. We want the peace of detachment, but we are driven by the adrenaline of conquest. We smell the incense in the temple and the gold in the market. Ancient civilizations understood that balance is almost impossible. Buddhism spoke of the middle way, the Greeks spoke of sophrosyne or temperance. But the truth is that desire is the color of life. Without it, existence is a black and white sketch. The fear of stopping desiring is the fear of disappearing, of becoming irrelevant, of being just one more atom in the cosmos without a will of its own. As we look at the broken statues in museums, we see the faces of people who desired intensely. Their stone eyes still seem to search for something on the horizon. They remind us that human ambition is what sets us apart from animals who desire only survival. We desire meaning. We desire to be remembered. We desire that our pain have a purpose and that our joys be eternal. To stop desiring is not just a philosophical choice. It is a form of death in life, a renunciation of the human experience in all its tragic beauty. If you stopped desiring right now, what would be left under your skin? Perhaps a profound peace, but also a terrifying silence. Civilization is the result of billions of desires colliding, creating sparks that light up the darkness of prehistory. We are the heirs of those who did not accept what they had and sought what was beyond the horizon. Every technology you use, every poem that makes you cry, every law that protects you, was born from someone's desire for something better, faster, more beautiful, or more just. In the end, the secret perhaps is not to stop desiring, but to choose with wisdom what deserves our fire. Selfish desire isolates and destroys us, but the desire for connection, for knowledge, and for transcendence is what makes us divine. As long as there is a human being looking at the stars and feeling a pang of curiosity, desire will continue to be the heartbeat of the world. Reflecting on these questions is what keeps us alive and aware of our journey. If this reflection resonated with you, continue exploring these depths with us by subscribing to the channel so that together we can question what we were and what we can still become. The desire to know is the only one that must never be silenced.